everybody.
Hey, good
It's
morning.
been a while, I feel like.
Well, I've done a few.
Oh, that's right.
But we haven't
It's
done.
been a while for me.
Yeah, we haven't done
Okay.
them together.
Yep.
So I'm
Yep.
excited to
Early
be back
March.
with you.
I know. Yeah.
It's a day. Let's
Yeah.
just do this.
It is a day. Every day's a
I
day.
know.
What are you
We got to
thinking?
reset here, Ray.
Okay.
Tell me
All
something
right.
good today. It's Thursday.
Hey,
All right.
a radio station that I listen to, one of the things that they do is they ask, is it Thursday already or is it only Thursday?
It's Thursday already.
There you go. There you go. Last week I probably would have said it's only Thursday, but this week I'm like, oh, it's Thursday already.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Facebook Live is kind of a benchmark in my week. So I haven't been doing them. I mean, for a month I haven't been here.
Yeah.
And the last one we did, I think we did from Chicago. I did from Chicago.
Right.
So that's been about a month.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was kind of only a Thursday last week.
Oh, you
So,
really
yeah.
look forward to these.
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, well, we want to know who is on with us. So let us know in the chats. We're keeping an eye on the comment section there. Go ahead and let us know who's joining us and where you are joining us from for today's Facebook Live chat.
Yep.
We have an interesting topic today, Ray.
Yes. Yes. Something
know,
I'm working on.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's why I wanted to talk about it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that then.
Yeah.
So you're working on this through your IPEC certification?
Yeah. Yeah. And just, honestly, you're never too old to, work on something. And so I am. I'm working on my intuition as a leader, and my intuition as a parent and a grandparent, and my intuition as a coach.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it something that is natural for you, or is it something, I mean, I hear you saying you're working on it. So are you just working to enhance it, or is it?
Yeah. I think all of us have intuition. Yeah. I mean, we all do. I think some of us are better at listening to it, or what I'm learning is better at receiving it, and tuning into it and really giving it some weight, and some fair space to exist. And some of us maybe discount it or over rationalize it and don't actually give it the space it deserves in helping us make decisions or, live our lives.
Right.
And so I'm really learning to tune into it a little bit more. Yeah.
I like that. I took a little bit of a journey, I guess, last year. I think I told you about the book I started reading. I consider myself an empath, highly sensitive to a lot of those everything. I tell you, I walk into a room and I get those vibes immediately. Yeah. I meet somebody and I get vibes. I can't explain them. I just know it exists. And I'll tell you what's been an interesting conversation to have throughout my career is just that. Where you're trying to articulate to somebody, especially in the workplace, why you feel a certain way about something. And they're like, make it rational. Like, tell me why. And I'm like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So I want to pause because I want to see, we got Patty on. Hi, Patty. Thanks for joining us. She's School of Medicine there in the surgery department. Ooh, you got a lot of stuff going on over there. Teresa, thanks for joining us. Hi, Julaine, joining us from Iowa. And Sierra for PSRS. You'll see maybe her tomorrow?
I think so.
Okay.
I definitely think so.
So I want to pause now. My second question to our folks, all right, as Ray and I are explaining kind of where we're at with this intuition, do you find yourself being more of an intuitive individual? Do you operate out of intuition? Or do you find yourself maybe being a little bit more logical in your approach to decision making?
Yeah. Maybe even in a scaling perspective.
Oh, yeah.
So, hi, Mike, yay! Really thinking, if you're intuitive, where are you on that scale? One being you're intuitive. We're all intuitive, but to what degree? One being not so much, don't listen to it very often, or 10, you really take it into consideration. I'd really like to know, where are you in relation to your ability to really listen to it and take it and give it
Right.
that space. Because I'm curious. I might, we all need to connect and leverage
Hmm.
these strengths and others. So 1 to 10, one not so intuitive as far as giving it space and really priority, and 10, oh yeah, it's a partner.
Hmm.
It sits in the co-pilot seat, definitely. So one
Where
to 10.
where would you say you're at on that?
Ooh, um, I'm probably a 4,
Okay.
but I'm between that 4 to 6. I'm aware, and I think that's really half of it.
Right.
And now I'm trying to figure out, as I'm tuning in, what bearing does it have?
Hmm.
Because it's not a natural place for me, and I'll tell you, a lot has to do with how I grew into my leadership. I think as a kid, my personality was very much driven by my gut.
Mm.
I'm very spontaneous.
Right.
And I think a lot of intuitive people that act in the moment really do act on that gut. What feels good
Right.
is really kind of that gut. It feels right to do this in the moment. Um, but schools,
Mm.
sorry, and I'm a former school teacher. We really too try to, you know, we basically institutionalize that out of our students sometimes, and
Sure.
we want to see your thinking, and we want you to conform to this, and things happen in step process.
Right.
And sometimes we don't always allow for, gosh, when your palms are sweaty, there's a reason why your palms are sweaty.
Right.
You don't always have to, prove your answer on paper. We should trust some of that.
Agreed.
And especially when we grew up in this data driven decision making, space of leadership. And yeah.
It's not respected, I think, in my opinion, in the business world as much. And I'm gonna bring you. You're starting to come off
Oh,
screen here,
oh,
right? Come
I'm
back in
down. I
here.
know.
I know. You're
I
so
feel like
excited.
we're
I
like
know.
so
We
close.
are. Hello.
Yes, yes, I know. I know.
But I think as far as for me, when I think of scale, and it should be no surprise, I'm there between that 8 and 10 to a
Yep, we
point
got some mates.
sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Teresa. Yeah, join that
Oh,
wagon here
there's
because
Kenda.
it and I'm curious from your all's perspective how you see it working for you, or maybe how it hinders you sometimes in the
Mm-hmm.
workplace. Because that is something in my leadership journey, and you and I have had these conversations. It, I know as a leader, it's important to have that kind of 15,000-foot view of
Yeah.
something and be very strategic about things and focus on some data. And
Mm-hmm.
that's at least what we're conditioned to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't operate that way. So that's a struggle for me and definitely a concern when I move up in that leadership
Mm-hmm.
approach. So let's just kind of get back to basics.
Okay.
Ray, when we talk about intuition, how would you define it?
Intuition. To me, the drill down definition is knowing something um, that's not based in fact or evidence.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's simple. I like it. I like it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like it. And I'm gonna pause because I really liked the way so Malcolm Gladwell is an author,
Mm-hmm.
and he's the author of Blink, and this is I liked what he said here, but he essentially said intuition strikes me as a concept that we use to describe emotional reactions, gut feelings, thoughts, and impressions that don't seem entirely rational, which I
Mm-hmm.
hear that
Mm-hmm.
said a lot. But he goes on to say, I think that what goes on in those first 2 seconds is perfectly rational. It's thinking, it's just thinking that moves a little faster
Mm-hmm.
and operates a little more mysteriously, I like that word,
Yeah.
than the kind of deliberate, conscious decision making that we associate with that thinking.
Yeah.
And so that was intriguing to me because you're right. I think it in all simplicity, it shouldn't make sense,
Yeah.
right? It's just that gut feeling that you have. But at the same time, what he is saying is there was some thought put into that. Just a very very quick kind of mysterious thought that we can't
Yeah.
rationalize.
Yeah. I it in I've heard people refer to it as like I had a spidey sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yep.
it was just kind of one of those things. But, really, I think intuition, there's different types of intuition. And I don't want to get all, weirded out, and I don't, don't want to get all like existential, but there are really different ways people experience their intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to give some space to this as I've been, exploring this idea of where is my intuition, as I'm thinking about how can I become more in tune with my intuition. And so we do all have different ways that our intuition shows up for us.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think as you're learning to tap into your intuition, the first thing, you've got to do is really just kind of ask for it. Ask. You've got a decision, or you're looking for that intuition, is really just kind of declare, hey, I'm looking at making this decision, help me, guide me, what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And those of you that have taken tests, or you're even furthering your studies, or even do you remember when your teachers would say, go with your first answer?
Yeah.
It's usually the right one.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. And you'd bubble it in when bubble tests were the
Oh
thing,
yes.
right? And we have kind of a funny saying around my house, you have the yellow pencil moment. So if my kiddos are on, like, I love you. It's a yellow pencil moment. But go with your gut, because sometimes that right answer really is the first answer is the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing without knowing. And so you got to kind of declare, you got to kind of ask for that guidance,
Mm-hmm.
but the most important thing is you've got to be ready to receive it. You've got to
Exactly.
be open
Yeah.
to listening.
Exactly. And I think that that requires a sense of mindfulness, like to literally pause and to accept what it is going on internally. And we don't do that
Mm-mm,
in this rush,
mm-mm.
rush, go, go, go situation we call life. It is not natural for us to pause and to tune into those internal feels.
Yeah, yeah. And definitely people with the personality of get it done,
Mm-hmm.
and that go in our business environment that is just at the speed of lightning.
Right.
We just move like that. We don't allow for that time to just say, let's have some space. Let's give some space to that thought. It's just like, and we think people, aren't smart because they're taking time to process,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we confuse that, or we judge that. Um, and so, I know many of you out there have heard this story, kind of this little example, but the small town that was flooding, and the preacher climbs on top of the church, and a parishioner comes by and says, Father, in a boat, and says, Father, get in the boat, and we'll, I'll save you. He goes, that's okay. That's okay. He said, God will save me. And he's like, okay, and he speeds away, and then another person comes up in a rowboat, and he's like, Father, get in the boat, I'll save you. And he goes, that's okay, son, God will save me. And he rows away, and the waters keep rising, and somebody comes down in a helicopter. He's like, please, Father, get in the boat, and he's like, that's okay, God will save me. And unfortunately the waters keep rising, and the father is swept away, and he drowns and dies, and he makes it to heaven, and he's standing at the pearly gates, and he was like, God, where were you? I was waiting for you to save me. And he goes, son, I sent a speedboat, a rowboat, and a helicopter. What other signs do you need, right? And so I think sometimes that's what happens is, we ask for that guidance, we ask for that sign, and it's right there, but we're not in a place of receiving.
Right. Right.
We're not listening for the signs. And it's not always that neon that says, Ray, here is the answer to your question,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then we don't pick it up.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm curious, thinking about that and hearing that story. Do you have a personal example of a time when maybe you were receiving all those signs, all right, your intuition was there, but maybe we didn't listen to it?
oh gosh, I have two personal examples. One is, yeah, definitely that when I was getting a feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and I just ran right through it. right? I was like, well, I'm smarter than that feeling.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a hiring decision. And this was a long time ago in a former job. And a gentleman came in, great on paper. I mean, you just nailed everything, every question, just, ugh, he was made up,
Hmm.
right? And that was exactly the truth. Um, and there was something running in the background that was just like, no, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And I did it anyway, right? Because everything on paper I couldn't justify to my bosses. Why aren't we hiring this guy?
Hmm.
He just fits everything we need,
Hmm.
right? And I did, I did. And 6 months later, we were having the talk, and I finally just had to say, this is not working out
Yeah.
for either one of us. And it was horrible. It was torture the whole time, right? It
Hmm.
was torture for his people that he was leading. It was torture for me trying to manage the situation of his people that he was not leading, and then freeing up his future to go be great somewhere else, you know? And that's not only, mentally exhausting, but it's financially not the right
Right.
place to be, because
Right.
it's expensive to hire somebody that doesn't work and doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And so
I,
that
I,
was the first one that came to my mind.
yeah, and I see this a lot, and I think even when we were doing our research for this episode,
Hmm.
um, that idea popped up a lot when it came to hiring people. And I had another similar example to that. And actually, I want to give kudos to my family member who did this, but had that gut instinct, reaction. Something doesn't seem right. I've had several conversations. Everything is looking good on paper. Had all of the right answers, but I just can't tell. And this is literally verbatim what he said to me. I can't tell if he's a good person. And I was like, okay. I said, well, if you're getting that feeling, then it's probably worth exploring.
Yeah.
And so he did. And he went ahead and made a few more calls to previous employers and a little bit more digging in the background, and come to find out it would not have been a good hire. And so they're exactly right. There is a time and a place. There's a reason why we have it. We just have to be willing to receive it. I
Yep.
like the way you said that.
Yep. Yep.
So there's a lot of benefits to intuition.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanna pause. Let's see. We have a question, maybe,
Yeah.
or
Well,
no, statement. Kenda.
Kenda, yeah, she says we met for a reason. Either you're a blessing or a lesson.
Ah,
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, any of those things we think of are always opportunities
yeah.
for learning, right? Whether it works out or it doesn't, whether you overrode your intuition, or whether you went with it. But either way, what are we learning from that? Whatever feelings coming up for you, what are you learning about yourself? What are you learning about the situation?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely,
Because
definitely.
we archive that information unconsciously, and then that's the information that may even perpetuate a little bit of the intuition the next time you enter a similar situation.
Yeah.
But I think, again, somebody who always operates out of intuition, I'll tell you some of the benefits I found with it is truly the timeliness of it, right? We can get things done rather quick. And there's times I've walked into your office when we did this,
Yeah.
and I was like, Ray, I have an idea. I have this feeling that this might work. And she said, okay, go. And it was to do these Facebook Lives.
Hmm.
And so that was just something. I hadn't put any rational thought behind it, but it worked. And so I think moving things along quickly and just getting things going, definitely the intuition helps in that
Yeah.
space.
Yep. Yep. I would agree. I would agree. Um, and I do remember that exact conversation because you crossed the lobby, or our little space
Yeah.
between our offices, and you said, Ray, I've got an idea. I just have this feeling, I want to try something. And I was like, yes. And you go, you haven't even
I did
heard
say
it.
that. Yeah.
And I was like, I don't have to.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
were like, no, really? Yeah. And then we
Yeah.
we sat down and we processed. I was like, yeah, I knew. And I knew you knew. It was just one of those things, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
And I often, like I said, I mean, that's daily. Traveling to work, I'll be like, okay, this path or this path, and oh, my gut just says take this path today.
Yeah.
And so it works out most times,
Yeah.
but the times that I don't, it seems to not work out.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. What other benefits do you see to really operating out of this intuitive place in leadership or in the workplace?
I think it really leads to a lot of innovation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it leads to better questions.
Yeah.
And not just better questions internally, but I think that's a great way to lead, is to ask great questions of the people that you are leading, to maybe open up perspectives, to maybe question biases, not related to anything sensitive, but just towards a certain product or service, or those kinds of things, or competitor, or I just think it's a great way to innovate and create. And one of, two people that I really look for as kind of my silent mentors. One, of course, as you know, is Maya Angelou, who I absolutely love. And the other is Einstein, because he was extremely clever, not just smart, but clever. He was witty and he was funny, and he relied a lot on his intuition. And he has hundreds of quotes out there, but I love this, and I wrote down a few just so I could capture them for you. But the idea that the intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift.
Wow.
And when I think about data, and I say this in a lot of my trainings, is that 56.7% of all statistics are made up. I know you're laughing because you got to kind of think about that. But fun fact, I just made up. We can almost find any statistic that captures what it is we're trying to prove, and that we become so faithful to whatever master we are serving. Right? And we talk about that confirmation bias. And, we're not really using the gift that we've been given.
Right. Right. And I'll tell you, knowing that it is such a gift, I actually gain like momentum. I gain energy from being able to use intuition. Like I get bogged down with data.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
We're sitting in our strategic planning meeting, was a few months ago, and I'm sitting there going,
yeah.
Oh, coffee, more coffee, please.
Yeah.
Because there is an energy that comes with just kind of going with it and those gut instincts. Consequences with it as well. And we'll talk about those here in a minute. But there's energy and creativity, I feel, are really some big productive points with intuition. Something I really, really highly value.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's kind of that opposite side, so let's talk a little bit about some of those consequences, because I do believe, and you and I have had this discussion, it's a balancing act. You you can't have one or the other, right? And it can't just be logic or rationale or intuition. Right. It's both. Right. So there are some consequences. What would be the top one that comes to mind for you? To just focusing on your intuitions.
Well, obviously, I mean, there's always the opportunity. Nothing works out. You don't have any rationale for why you're doing what you're doing. Something doesn't work and you keep doing it. You can't back anything up. You could be categorized as, a little bit
airy, dreamy, off in left field.
Yeah.
Oh wait,
But I mean, really, you might not be brought to the table.
It's like, yes.
Absolutely. What do I mean? The table, air quotes.
Right.
Because you can't validate things. You're just like, oh, I just have this feeling.
Right.
Well, sometimes it's got to be a little bit more than that. And so, when you're coaching through that, and that intuitive feeling, then you got to, so what are the emotions behind that, right? Use those emotions to test kind of that accuracy of that intuition, and then use your logic to analyze that. So I think there is a process for doing that, but you can't just always be blowing in the wind.
I agree. 100%. And I got to pause for a minute because you got a yo mom on here.
Oh, Hey, I got a story for you. Just a sec.
All
Just a
right,
sec.
Boone, stay with us. So,
Yep.
Ray's son on.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
He has great intuition, and so I asked him to join us.
Yeah, I listen to the story. I'm excited to hear the story. I'll tell you when it comes to consequence, one of the things I think about, especially in this current, I'm really interested in learning more about implicit bias, and that's why we've had the last few discussions. But that's one thing I will tell you as a consequence to really operating solely out of your intuition is that you often then are reaffirming assumptions that you've already made subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that and had to catch myself in some of those situations. And so something to really be
Mm-hmm.
cognizant about when you're operating out of intuition.
Yeah.
But let's get to your story.
Yeah. So, earlier I talked about different types of intuition.
Mhm.
And so there's more than just these four, but these are the ones that probably most people can identify with.
Mhm.
And so if you'll kind of allow me to put a little teaching in here,
Yeah.
because that's kind of what we do. But,
What?
I know. And then I want to give you an example of one that's really clear. Um, so the first one you've probably heard about it, is clairvoyance. And really what that means is kind of this clear vision that from whatever you can just really see. And a lot of leaders, are visionaries. They can clearly see where we need to go. For whatever reason, kind of that vision, whether it's, in front of them or whether it's just the mind's eye, what we say, kind of that third eye, it happens, and
Mhm.
we can call that clairvoyance. Now you can go and think the crystal ball and all of that kind of stuff, but really there is people that have this clear vision
Right.
of what makes sense, right, through their intuition. There's also something called clairsentience, and clairsentience is just that clear sense or that clear feeling. So when we were talking about I just have that spidey sense. I
Right.
just have that, that knowing, or that feeling. Clairaudience. Clairaudience is, audible. You might get that, maybe it just comes to you, through hearing something. Maybe all of a sudden you've heard that song like repeatedly, and you're just like, wait a minute, that's speaking to me.
Yeah.
I've never heard that song in my life, and now I'm hearing that song because I'm dealing with this issue. That to me is a clear audience. That's speaking to you in a certain way. You're going through something, and now you're hearing the song, and it's been out since 2003. Just those kinds of things. Or you've never traveled to this destination, and now you've met three people from that
Mm.
place, that are talking to you about that place. Just things like this. That's where you have to be ready to receive.
Sure.
And then claircognizance, right, is just knowing. You know something, and you don't even know how you know it, but now you know it, right? And just that claircognizance. So there's different types. There's more, smells and that kind of stuff, taste, but I won't get into that. Um, so my son, um, he is very intuitive. That's just his personality. He can read people really quickly. He can connect with people really quickly. It's a gift. He responds in that manner. So he is very spontaneous, and like I said, it's just a gift. Um, he at one point in his life was really dealing with some issues. Okay. And my mom, his grandma, they were really close, and she passed away when he was, I believe, 10. Okay. But they had a connection. And again, I don't know, they just on some level, some really deep level, connected. And he had said as a young kid, when he grows up, he's going to go live with GM. That's what they called her. He was going to go live with GM, and they were going to build this great business together. And they were both very entrepreneurial in spirit. In fact, he owns his own construction business. Shameful plug, Lost Boys Construction. And they were, just gonna poof, just hit the world running. And so anyway, she's passed away when he was 10. He happened to be going through a pretty dark time. And, as most of us do when you hit bottom, I mean, you bottom out. And so he was struggling this particular day, um, and just wasn't able to lift himself up.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was having this moment, and knowing that he is this really intuitive being. And he calls me, you know, and says, "Hey, I got to share something with you because I think you're the only one that would understand." And he shares about an experience that he had where GM came and just basically spoke to him, enveloped him. He had a sense of her and basically said, "Get it together. You're going to be okay. You've got all the skills that
Wow.
you need," right? And it was
Mm-hmm.
just kind of this knowing and feeling that, you know what, you got this,
Right.
right? Not explainable to anybody.
Right.
It wasn't, it wasn't a cray cray moment. It was just, that experience of being an extremely in touch and in tune and open and receptive because, quite honestly, at that point, there was nowhere else to go.
Mm-hmm.
There was no list you could make, there was no box you could check. And you were just totally open and receptive, and you had declared and asked, you were listening to receive, and you were ready to act and learn from that. And so I know that there are people out there that have had that experience.
Right.
And I don't want you to think that, like, oh, I need, dial the, cuckoo house, because it is real.
It is.
Intuition is real and all of us possess it. Just at what levels are we accessing it?
Right.
And, what was so funny is I have had an experience like that. And, you do hesitate to share because sometimes you're like, oh, people will think, like, you know,
Right.
but, when sometimes you have nowhere else, that really taps in. And I asked permission to share. And so I just want everybody to know, and you can send him the loves because he's on. Um, he picked himself up. He started his business. It is thriving. He's a wonderful father. He's a wonderful co parent. He's an outstanding son. He's a creative, brilliant, funny, artistic, connected brother. Um, he's a fantastic human being, and he's extremely intuitive, and that's something that I am tapping into and leveraging from him
Yeah.
as his gift and talent. So I appreciate you,
Mm-hmm.
and thank you for letting me share your story because intuition is real.
It is. It is. And I remember the day that you came in and you shared that with me. And I started tearing up hearing that story because a lot of people aren't vulnerable to that point. So, Boone, again, shout out to you, that you called somebody up and had shared that experience because you're right. People bring it down for really telling those things
Right.
that are unexplainable.
Right.
And that's very difficult. And so I think that we all have a due diligence to ensure that we are supporting folks who maybe have this natural intuition. You've done a great job there with Boone, and definitely making sure that we're being respective of those differences. If you don't understand it, that's okay,
Yeah.
but don't put it down.
No. And there's ways you can coach through that, because we as leaders,
Mm,
um, partners, spouses, we can walk through that experience. We don't have to be in that intuitive headspace to appreciate that gift.
right.
And so, reach out. We, all of us at Missouri Training Institute can help connect those dots, whether you come from the left brain,
Right.
or you're trying to tap into more of your intuition. we say it's not a step-by-step process, but there are ways to move through that more fluently,
Right.
and so I encourage you, take stock in that, give space to it, because I think in this modern workforce,
Yeah.
we are moving more towards that dynamic
Absolutely.
and less from, the check the box approach to managing and leading others. It's very much more human
It is. It
these days,
it
and I love
absolutely.
it.
I do too. I do too. And I'll tell you, it's been interesting. Some clients that we worked with in the past, I can always tell when I'm in a room full of folks who are all about the logic, and then maybe in a room full of folks that have a little bit more of that intuitive nature. And people that operate solely out of logic, there's a place and a reason for that.
Absolutely.
And we love that. And I want to make sure that we're bringing those folks in and saying, if that's where you are, great. All right, don't lose that. We still need that. But certainly, let's make sure that we are appreciating the strengths that each individual can bring
Yep.
too.
Yep.
And so, Kathy, your mama's correct. You're doing great things, young man. All right. Shout out to Boone yet again
Yeah.
there. I'd love to know from
He's
you all
amazing.
in our last few minutes here as we're kind of wrapping up. Are there some experiences that you've had
Mm.
where your intuition has really played a vital role in a good decision or a bad decision that was made? So share with us in the chat. And then, of course, let us know if you have questions so that we can get those answered before we wrap up. But one of the things I thought was interesting before we got started is you had brought this, and I see it in front of you now, but this idea of if you operate out of this, or if you're kind of this
Yeah.
kind of person, here's probably your process.
Mm-hmm.
And this will kind of help us harness a little bit of both that logic and that intuitive nature. So can you explain that a
Yeah.
little bit?
Yeah. And speaking of, I want to get to Jelaine because she said I changed careers
Oh, there
as
it
a
is.
result of intuition.
Wow.
So, kind of that spidey sense,
Yeah.
might have said, maybe I need to go a different direction. And I have to kind of piggyback on that. I did as well. I didn't know it at the time that it was my intuition, but I saw what my current job was doing with my family, and I was just like, I don't want to be this person anymore. And so I said, I'm going to hold out. So I'm all in your camp as well, definitely. So we know intuition is there for a reason, and those that naturally tap into it, are you recognizing that it is intuition? And so following your emotions to the logic, so that it gives you some basis for it. That's a great way to map through that process. I would say, you're intuitive, but I think your emotions lead you
Right.
through your intuition. So emotions to intuition to that logic is the process. And what do you do with it, now that you know it? And then people that are true left brainers, right? And they lead with the logic, and then from the logic, and this is going to be harder, and this is where I usually bring in like an emotions wheel, and you've seen
I've
our
seen it.
emotions
Yep.
wheel, and really thinking about from logic to emotions, then to intuition, because what the intuition does for the logic people is open up possibilities,
Right.
right? So they don't get focused, or they don't get analysis paralysis
Yeah.
based on that data,
Right.
or analyzing the data. So intuition opens them up to other perspectives and other possibilities. So kind of we reverse engineer it, from intuition to logic and from logic to intuition, but we use emotions as kind of the conduit there.
Yeah. I like that. And when you shared that with me, that was really interesting. And you're right, I did. I immediately went, oh, yep, I'm the emotional one that intuitively does what the
Yep.
emotions are feeding me. So yeah, it's an interesting process. And I love, I know that this is something that you're really opening up in conversations with your coaching clients as well.
Yep.
So I'm gonna put a shameless plug in
Oh,
there
thank you.
for Ray's executive coaching. We sent out a mailer. She's doing executive coaching, professional coaching now, and we talk about, I say you talk about this
Yeah.
in some of those sessions with folks to really just help us figure out what is the best path forward. And so if you're interested in that, reach out to us, mti@missouri.edu. I'm not seeing any questions come in, Ray.
No, I'd love to be challenged on it. I want to know how you use your intuition,
Yeah.
or want to use it more.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes. Well, Send those in if you think about it. Maybe you're processing still, you're thinking about some of this information. Send us an email. Let us know what you thought of today's session. I'd also encourage you, if you got a topic idea, we're always loving your topic ideas. So let us know what that is. You can email that to us as well. But Ray, I think it's time to go record some podcasts.
Yep.
And we'll have another Facebook Live here in a couple weeks. I am excited. Hold on, let's do our announcement. We got about a month out from it. But I did book yesterday on May 5th.
Yep.
We're going to have Mayor Carrie Turgeon, the mayor of Jefferson City, on our Facebook Live with us. We're talking about her leadership style. So we're really excited. Thank you, Mayor Turgeon, if you're watching this, for the opportunity to have you on. And we hope you'll join us for that session on May 5th. But until then, Ray?
Well, first of all, I love you, Boone.
Ah.
And go be great.